Hello, Tally Scrappers. Nancy Scraps here.
And I'm Margaret.
And we're going to talk today about using paint on your scrapbook pages. I use scrapbooking paints like from Making Memories or Heidi Swapp. Lil Davis makes some. But you can really use any sort of acrylic paint. First thing I'm going to talk about is using foam stamps. Foam stamps, a lot of companies make them. These are Making Memories. I love this font. It's called Jersey because it's big and kind of thick. You can also buy shapes. These are also a Making Memories shape. You can go to a store like Michael's and they'll have ones for like stamping on walls. Heidi Swapp also makes acrylic foam stamps. I shouldn't say they're acrylic foam. They're foam mounted on acrylic so you can see where you're stamping. So when I start, I always make sure I mix up my paint real well, and I squirt a little bit out onto one of these plastic trays. I use these foam brushes like you get at Home Depot or Lowe's. Put some paint on the brush, then I put paint on the stamp itself, and the paint can slip around a little bit. I like to anchor my hand before I put the stamp down. Tap on it just a little bit. Make sure you're on a flat surface, and there's the stamp. So that wasn't the best image. Let's try again. Sometimes it takes a little practice. Same thing over again. One thing you need to know is if you put it on really, really thick, let me put this on really thick for an example, and you press really hard, it splooches out to the sides and you get a ridge around the edge, which may be something that you want, or maybe not. I just want you to be aware of that. So that's pretty much all I have to say about foam stamps. I wanted to talk really briefly about chipboard, that you can paint your chipboard. This is gray chipboard that I've painted white with gesso first. This is gesso. You can get it at an art supply store. It just makes the paint more visible if you use the gray chipboard. Don't forget to paint your edges. I've also painted thickers and stickers, so anything that you can put on a page, you can paint. So, moving on to the next technique I'm going to talk about is direct paper. And I have some examples of my doing that. Here's a soccer page I did, and I mixed the paint for this title, and when I was done I had some left, and I hate to waste the paint that's left in the tray and it's mixed. So what I did is I simply painted around the pictures using the foam brush, and I put some swirls in the border. So it's a real easy way to use paint. Here's an example where I did both. You can see I used what's called a dry brush technique to make it look streaky. This is a thicker that I painted. And for the dry brush, you just want to make sure there's not too much paint on it, and you lightly brush, and you can see how you get the streaks. You can see that. And that's how you get that dry brush technique. Another fun thing to do is bubble wrap. And I just use the foam brush, go right on the bubble wrap. If you can see that. Turn it over, pat it down. You have a bubble wrap background. Very cool. I know a lot of you guys have used that. Here's an example of a layout that I did with that. There it is. And you can even wash and reuse your bubble wrap. I have several sizes. You can do that. The last thing I'm talking about is masks and stencils. Here's an example. I got this idea from Emily Falconbridge, using a thicker chipboard as a stencil, painted over the whole page. I watered down the paint a little bit so it was a wash. don't forget you can paint on pattern paper. I tend to only think of it with chipboard, but you can also paint on pattern paper. And when you pull this off, you've got the stencil with the pattern paper in the background. So that's pretty cool. Another great way to do masks is using the Heidi Swapp masks. You can use regular stamping ink on them, but you can also use paint. So here's an example of the Heidi Swapp mask, and I'll be using this after I mix up some paint. So let's talk about mixing paint. I was scared to mix paint at first, and then I realized you just have to try it, and if you don't like it, you just throw it away and start over. The best things to do are to mix things with white. If you mix with white, obviously you'll get a lighter color, but you can actually mix with black or brown to get darker colors. So you don't have to buy 7 bottles of blue like I have. You can mix your own ranges of blue, and I would recommend, if you're just starting with paint, to get a favorite color or two, then get some white and brown and black, and that will do you a long ways. So I'm going to do a paint mixing experiment right here live. If you've never mixed paint before, I'd like you to try, if you have it, with pink and brown. This is a layout I did, and I mixed pink and brown paint together and got this sort of terracotta, and I really like that color a lot. So that's a color combination I wouldn't have thought of that I'd try. So here's the layout that I just did, and I decided that I want to put a row of dots across the bottom. So here's the Heidi Swapp mask. It's a little sticky on the back, and I put that down where I want the dots. I think I want them about right there. And now I'm going to mix my paint. And I decided this green was pretty close, but it was a little bright, so I wanted to darken a little bit with a brown, so I'm going to give that a try. So again, mix a little bit out on the tray. That's probably more than I need. And just put them together. Use a foam brush to swirl them together. Obviously, make sure you make enough for the whole thing that you're going to paint. That's probably still a little too bright green for what I want. I'm going to add a little more brown. I'm really going to have too much. And I'm going to call that good. That's kind of how I learned to mix paint. With these masks, you just daub over the top. You can make your own stencils and use removable adhesive to put them down, or masks. You really don't want to let it set very long. Oops, forgot a spot there. Peel it off. And now I have a row of dots across the bottom.
Wow.
Very cool. So I would challenge you all to use some more of your paints if you have some. And if you don't, go out and get a few bottles and give it a try. It's pretty fun. And so I'm signing off now. This is Nancy Scraps.
And this is Margaret.
And you want to say bye, Amelia?
Bye.